Howdy yo, what do you know, this is Rabbit of ScrubLeet Academy, and we are back today, doing some Dido related content, but not exactly Dido itself. See, what we're going to be doing today is actually checking out some of the new Update 51's early preview. I think that it'll be interesting. It's a little different than what we usually cover on this channel, and honestly, with so many people talking and so much, let's say, opinion on this update, I figure I'm going to give a perspective from this, from the perspective of somebody who's more of a casual gamer, who doesn't really play at a hardcore level. I'm not going to be Reaper 10ing anytime soon. I'm not going to be soloing raids. Let's be real, I'm me. I'm Little Rabbit. I'm not going to be able to do all that stuff. But I'm not quite casual enough to be a new player who doesn't know what any of this means. So I'm somewhere hovering in the middle. It's really kind of an interesting place to be, but it gives me an interesting and different perspective on what Update 51 is bringing to us today. So I'm just going to be going through all of these notes, all of these, well, there's 4 little options here that sort of go over the core design framework of Epic Destinies and how they're being changed, or how the early alpha preview is of them being changed. And we're going to go over them and see what I think of them as they are right now. And then, of course, we'll have a part 2 to this, and we'll cover all these individual Epic Destinies. Every one of these, we'll just go over them. There's 7 of them total right now. They've got Fury of the Wild, Primal Avatar, Shirati Champion, Legendary Dreadnought, Shadow Dancer, Grandmaster of Flowers and Vine, Crusader. Those are the 7 that are available right now in Lamania, and I'll actually log into Lamania and showcase those in part 2 of this video. Part 1 is going to be dealing with these 3 first forum posts here: the Epic Destiny revamps of the core framework, the design paradigm, and some feats, Destiny feats, and legendary feat changes. I think those 3 will be the cover for just this. Those 3 are going to be what we're covering today. I'm not super concerned with the Update 50 because really the controversy of this is coming from Update 51, the early preview here, and if you read through any of these forums, you're going to see a litany, an endless supply of hatred. And it's actually kind of ridiculous how much people do not like the changes that are happening here. But I do have a feeling that a lot of these changes, or a lot of these analyses and commentaries, are coming from a certain perspective. You could really see the same kind of person, the same game player, saying this kind of stuff throughout all of these posts. And it's always about, you're ruining my destinies, you're ruining the game, we're never coming back to play. That's not true. You are, first of all, if you're playing the game to such a degree that you're keeping up with these early preview patches, you're coming back to play. Let's be real. But second, this isn't necessarily all for you, or somebody who plays like you do. I actually have a different perspective on this, and I'm going to go over it and just showcase what it is that I see in these destinies, the potential I see in the revamp. So let's jump right into it. This is all just an introduction telling us, hey, this is very alpha test right now. This is going to be the bare bones basics of everything we're dealing with. But we're not done, so just give that a bit of thought. That's basically what this post here is saying. So let's go ahead and let's go right into the first one. And I've got them all up top here, tabbed out. We can swap right over there. And to the second of Coco Majobo's posts. One of the, I don't know if he's a developer, I'm not entirely sure. Casual, once again, as I say, but it gives a new perspective. So let's go over what he is saying right here. So he starts off by saying that this is a pretty crazy read, and having read through these notes already, I totally agree. This is a huge revamp of Epic Destinies, and to be fair, for a long time, EDs have needed this. So I think it's going to be an interesting one to showcase. So basically, what they're doing here, we're going to fully revamp the ED structure from the ground up to provide a cohesive leveling experience from level 20 to 30 and beyond. The new structure resembles heroic enhancements, 6 cores along the bottom and 5 tiers. That's basically, yeah, as he mentioned here, it's basically your enhancement trees. So you're just getting an extension of your enhancement trees. And you can be in a max of 3 destinies at a time. That's a big deal here, because it simplifies things. Because the system that people are learning now in heroics is the system they will be applying in epics. That is important. And I don't think too many people have gained a sense of appreciation of this. They're lamenting the loss of twists, twists of fate, and fate points, and all this other jargon that is a completely different system. It's more difficult, not less, it's more difficult for new players to understand the Epic Destiny system than it is to understand this new revamp, presuming this new revamp is coming out the way that it's being espoused here today. So basically, what this reads as to me is that you're going to be able to place points in these trees as you would the enhancement trees, which is going to be a really interesting but also easy to understand system for new players who are going into Epic, which is what this is kind of made for. Epic Destinies right now are kind of really tough for a new player to grasp fully, and I know that because it was tough for me to grasp fully when I started the game. So, I guess we're going to keep unpacking this because it actually is really interesting when you get down to it. So, what we're doing here, as you level up beyond 20, you earn Epic Destiny points that you can spend in Epic Destiny trees. And apparently now the Epic levels are going to be displaying their experience in ranks rather than just one giant bar for the level, just like Heroic levels do, which is good. They're streamlining the experience. That's the greatest thing. It's not the greatest, but it's a great thing. They're making it so that your Heroic experience prepares you for Epic rather than making it that your Heroic experience is your Heroic experience and your Epic is something completely different and kind of foreign. In this regard, it's going to look the same. So each point is earned at each rank of an Epic level, which means that each Epic level corresponds to 4 Destiny points. That's great. So basically, how it is you're going to start off with a certain amount of points, and then throughout each level, just like Heroic, you're going to earn more points. 4 different ranks, just like 4 ranks per level in Heroic. And then the 5th rank being the actual level itself. So you earn Destiny points at a steady rate, rather than just a giant chunk each 5 ranks. So basically what they've got here, Epic Destiny abilities, or each Epic Destiny ability in the new Destiny system has a point requirement as well as a level requirement, just like Heroic enhancements. So you can't just jump ahead after level 20 without, actually spending points. That's basically what it's telling us here, pretty much verbatim. But they've got different point values. Your cores have different levels and AP requirements to access them. Cores 4 to 6 are not currently in the Lamania test server, and they might actually make a higher level cap than 30, so that might be a big deal. Tiers are also kind of the same thing, except 20, 20, 23, 26, 30, and you can only be on one tier 5. So it's very similar to Heroic experience and Heroic enhancement trees. So they've changed pretty much every Epic Destiny, and that's something we'll get into in part 2 of this little section here, because this is a lot of information to digest. We're just doing this kind of stuff right now. We're just going over the core components of what's happened so far, what's going to be happening, or at least what they're planning to have happen, the developers. But it's an attempt to make Epic Destinies more in line with the Heroic experience, which is a very good thing. It's a very good idea because we need those new players in this game. I think it's a little lackluster at the moment, going into a group and finding out that you've got like 2 veterans and then nobody else joins you. It's silliness. We actually need the lifeblood of the game back in here, and we need stuff like this to make it easier to understand and more friendly, more user-friendly. And there are still elements to it that are built for hardcore players who know their builds, who know what to use. Like, there are different feats that are going to be more valuable in Epic Destinies because those will unlock additional value. Dido is a very particular game. I'm going to say that right now. It's a very particular game, whereas many games use the element of, here's a carrot if you do this thing, but there's also benefit if you don't. So there's always a carrot. There's always something to lead you into doing something. Dido is more like, here's a stick that I'm going to whap you with if you didn't do this thing 3, 4, 10 levels ago. That's like, there's a big difference between those two mentalities. And the carrot versus stick, the stick is basically an elitist lightning rod. And it will lead elitist players into the game, but it will push casuals away. Now, mind you, that's where I come in. I'm kind of a stand-in, a go-between between these two much more extreme groups. I don't have time for this versus, well, you should just probably play 16 hours a day like I do, and then you'll get what you need. I'm a stand between those. And I do play Dido really regularly, as you probably can tell from the channel already. I play it very regularly, and I have to admit, Epic Destinies suck. They don't feel epic. They don't feel like I've actually achieved anything. The identity is not there. In their current inception, Epic Destinies are terrible. Like, I don't know why people are... They're acting the part of an apologetic. There's no goodness to this system. It's very clunky, it's very weird, it's very bad, and it scales so terribly, and it's backloaded as all get up. Like, right now, these changes that they're implementing are actually really good because it starts to scale you with your epic leveling experience. The gear is not the only metric. And I'm not talking like there are level 23 and 26 and 25 pieces of gear that you can use, but a lot of them are gated behind raids. A lot of them are gated behind doing content that you can't handle as a first lifer without a vast party of people who carry you through that content and bore you to all, bore you completely because they're steamrolling it because they know the game and you don't. Like, the thing is, player power has gotten ridiculous to the point where if you are a multi-lifer, content is trivial. And if you're a new character, you have to rely upon these guys who trivialize the game for you, making it not fun. But Epic Destinies are actually starting to work against that. All your trees are unlocked right off the bat, so it's super easy to get into. You don't need a giant manual list of telling you, hey, here's an Epic Destiny, but you're a divine class, so you can choose the destiny on the opposite side of this one, and you have to work towards it constantly, gimping yourself horribly against content that you can't handle anyway, in order to get to the destiny you want to start playing the game. Not very good. All the trees are unlocked. Great. And each tree also provides fate points per tree. So you actually start off with a decent amount of points right off the bat. 24 according to this. And you don't have Twists of Fate anymore. That's not a thing. You can just spend points wherever you want to get abilities and then reset the trees and spend them somewhere else if you feel like it. You don't have to go to an Epic Destiny trainer if you're a free-to-play player. You don't have to muddle around with potential derivatives of other trees. There's no BS to the system. That's the big thing. The BS-o-meter is completely null. It's hovering on 0 with this new system. You just have the stuff, it's super easy to figure out, and you don't have to worry about finagling things to try and make things work. So, permanent Destiny points, and of course just standard Destiny points, Fate points. Fate points and Destiny points are a little different in this system. So basically your Fate points will grant you extra hit points and spell points that start at level 20. And your Destiny points, your permanent Destiny points... Alright, so basically... You're pretty decent to start with. You actually get to spend points in these trees and have them right off the bat. And that's a very huge buff early game. Epic Reincarnating is no longer this ridiculous grind to get 6 million experience. Thank God it's not that kind of terrible experience. It's just, as soon as you reach max level, you can take an Epic Past Life. And that's good. That's good. That's an actual good thing. And Epic Completionist has been scaled up so you can have up to 4 stacks of Epic Completionist. That's way better. Like, I don't see what people are complaining about yet. But let's keep going. Let's keep going and see what we've got. Alright, so basically, for as far as experience, you don't have that anymore. There is no more Epic Destiny experience. The Epic Feats are just Epic Feats. There's no more, I don't know, what are they? Spheres? Yes, there's no more spheres anymore. They're gone. You don't have those ridiculous prerequisites to get feats that are normally staples of a class that you wouldn't have as a First Life player. A lot less micromanaging on the feat system, which is already a bloated, terrible system. I don't like the feat system. Getting away from the prereqs and the constant need to build a character from scratch all the way to 30 before you start playing is a good thing. It's a very good thing. The 12 destinies are just completely unlocked in this new system, or will be unlocked at level 20. You just go through a tutorial. And you only need epic experience. So you have 1 XP bar, not, 5 experience bars, 4 for each of the spheres, 1 for each of the spheres, 4 total, and then your epic experience. You don't have as much to micromanage. It's not as ridiculously over the top. It's kind of worse for veteran players who want to pretend that their character is awesome because they built it amazingly well, and not because they've got so many past lives and so much experience in the game, it's not quite as good for those players. I will say that. Like, it's a much more simplified, much less robust system. But for anybody else, it's a better system, just in general. You get easier access to epic feats, you get easier access to destiny feats, and if you're checking out this chart here, you can actually see where you get those things. Epic feat, 21. Epic destiny feat, 22. Another epic feat, 24. Epic destiny, 25. Another 27 and 28. You can also get epic feat 4 at level 30, because you're scaling up every 3 levels as well. Standard feats, except in the 21 and above, you're actually in epic levels, so you're getting epic feats. And you get the legendary feat at 30 as you used to. And you also unlock epic destiny tiers 1 and 2 immediately, 3 at 23, 4 at 26, and then 5 at 30. So you see there's an actual leveling metric by which you scale accordingly. So everything that you're learning, every level that you gain, gives you something, which is right. It's amazing. It's perfect. The current unlocks are, entire ED system up to tier 6 at level 20. That's what we get right now. Epic feat 1 at 21, 24, 27, 30, that actually scales accordingly. But then the destiny feats are really backloaded. You see all this? 26, epic destiny feat 1. 28, number 2. 29, number 3. And that's also where you get most of the gear you're going to be having in the game. Like, the latter half of epics is the part of the game that's fun. Whereas in the new system, every part of epics can have some fun. That's kind of important. That's really, really important. The only thing that doesn't currently give anything is level 29. And that gives you all your gear. All the gear that you've farmed out, or access to all the gear that can be farmed. So this is really good for new players and veterans. This is a huge power bump still, level 29, but it's not the only power bump in the game for epic leveling. So that's actually a really big deal and a really good change, honestly. But that's pretty much all that we've got for here. There's some not yet implemented stuff here. But for the most part, we're not really dealing too much with a lot of this yet, just because this is bug stuff, so we're not actually dealing with that. This is more just the new system. And I'm curious to look at the new system more than anything. I'm not so much into reporting bugs just yet because it's a very alpha test system right now. So this is more of a glimpse past the veil, so to speak. We're getting a glimpse past the curtain. So let's check out the next thing here. So here we are, the design paradigm, the revamps. So basically, old Epic Destinies gave specific bonuses to specific caster levels in the cores. But the new ones just give caster level, which is good. Like, Epic Destinies are not... You're not a wizard in the Magister tree. You're not a sorcerer in the Draconic tree. You are just an epic character who is manipulating their own destiny in a certain way. You are becoming something more of a sorcerer, something more of a Draconic incarnation. But you're not a sorcerer. You could have been a paladin your whole life and then eked into the Draconic incarnation for a breath or something like that. And you shouldn't get sorcerer caster levels for that. You should get caster levels. It's more simplified, right? It seems like it's a better thing. And that way you actually get value out of the character classes you chose, rather than getting only value with a character class that you may not have chosen. That's the most important part about that. And that's a really good thing. Caster levels are a bad idea in the game right now because it requires you to build so specifically in order to eke out the caster levels you need for DCs. New Epic Destinies, just give them. That's a big thing I harp on a lot too, is caster levels. But no, if you have just baseline +1 all caster levels, it's easier to keep managed. And then you can work on other stuff, like actually, like learning how these new classes work, learning how new destinies work, figuring out which twists, or in this case, which enhancement trees benefit your build the best, rather than having to work around things that didn't really build well in order to make it work. Spell schools and DCs, yeah, they've basically organized the spell schools so that some of them fit with certain classes, but they're not all like front-loaded into Magister where you get plus all the DCs to one specific type of school, and then nobody else gets a real school. Magister always won in that one. So now they've actually got a bunch of different epic bonuses to all DCs, a bunch of bonuses in specific trees to specific DCs, but nobody gets all the DCs anymore, which is really cool. And they're also planning on removing Epic Resilience buff from all monsters to make DCs far easier to achieve. Very good idea. Epic Resilience was a little annoying, and honestly, DCs should have a hard cap. You should have a hard cap, and then once you reach that cap, you can guaranteed use your ability. And then, it will be a lot easier to play the game. Maybe make the Epic Resilience so that the monsters can get out of the debuff or get out of the CC effect really quickly, but not make it so that they're immune to it. That's the big thing. So anyway, spell power types. They're increasing the spell power availability in certain regards, which is good. That's fine. Because they're also giving universal spell power in addition to standard spell powers. And there's, thematic ones with each spellcasting destiny. So not too bad. Spell critical chances. Thankfully, the spell criticals are going down a bit because you could 100% spell crit sometimes. It was, well, I don't know if you could 100%, but it was really high. Like, I had a 70 or something with my wizard on negative. It was super easy to get spell critical. Draconic used to be spell critical damage, and now they've got spell critical damage a little more accessible, like especially with the legendary feats. Spell critical damage is in pretty much every one of them, which is cool. I like it. Melee and range power, they've all been adjusted. 10 melee and 6 ranged for every martial type of, or not martial, because that would imply the martial sphere. For every physical damage dealing tree, you get 10 and 6, except in Fury of the Wild and Shirati, because Fury in the Wild will only be melee and Shirati will only be ranged, which is good. Keep them that way. That's kind of cool. It gives a little bit of a theme there. Usage per rest abilities are coming back, so we've got charges for things, which is kind of cool. They're tying in feats, that's what they're mentioning there. Ability score bonuses, there are no more of those, so the whole line is just gone. And that's cool, because it frees up so much space for good stuff. As they say, it frees up the real estate. They don't have any junk in those trees anymore. It's all stuff that benefits those, or accordingly, it's all stuff that benefits those trees. We're going to check those out in a moment and see what we think of them, and maybe do a bit of a grading scale on them and see how these trees pair up. But getting rid of all that whole line, that was 6 different abilities that were just completely pointless and wasting space. DC checks on old epic destinies to determine their DC, and sometimes didn't include the DC bonuses they should have, like Consume in the Rogue tree. I've always kind of wondered what the real DC with that one was, because it never scaled the way that my Assassinate DCs did. And the SLAs also were a big problem. I didn't do much caster in the old system, so I didn't know a lot about the old SLAs, but I knew they were always a problem. People always complained about them. So now they're making mental stats, or magic using stuff is going to use your mental attributes, your mental ability scores. Physical stuff, like your dire charge, is going to use your physical damage scores. One of the highest, whichever one is the highest for you, which is a big deal. But the DC checks are going to be a lot easier to get to. So honestly, it means that melees will be gated a little more, but that's actually a good thing, because if you really think about it, melees were not gated necessarily, were more gated actually, because they would choose dire charge all the time. They would choose, if they had any casting ability at all, they would choose Mass Frog. It was just guarantees across the board. You could not choose anything that was better. Nowadays, it's going to adjust how people build things. So it's not bad or good. It's just got to be seen for what it actually becomes, for what we actually get to test out when Update 51 goes live again in Lamania. And new trees. Apparently they're going to be bringing in at least 3 more trees to loosely correspond to each heroic class, which is going to be really cool. Because, first of all, we've only had the 12 trees for as long as I can remember. And second, they're really doing very well with these trees, I think, because I've given a baseline glimpse of it, and we're going to go way further into it in the second part. But I think they're really doing a good job of capturing a theme for each tree, sort of relevant to each class, but in a way that makes it seem like you are becoming that class. Not just that you're a better paladin than you ever were, but you could be a rogue and try to become more of a paladin by going into Divine Crusader. Something like that. Like, they're actually capturing some of that essence, which is good. But they're making sure that you don't become full pally. It's not omitting a lot of the heroic stuff. It's just you've gained some pally. Now, one of the big things, and this one is not released just yet, Magus of the Eclipse is replacing Magister. And it's going to be, I think it's cold and negative, and is it force? No, cold, negative, and necromancy. So it's going to be very necromancy oriented. The wizards kind of become a necromancy class. I'm a little disappointed that they leaned into that too heavily. Magus of the Eclipse. So I'm going to say that one's iffy for me, but I'm going to have to see how it works because we haven't seen that tree yet, and it's not in the current alpha test. So what's changing in Destinies? What's the major change? Destiny mantles, builders, spenders, charges, enhancers. Like, this is going to be a really big change here, and it's basically a resource you're keeping up. The mantles are auras. Every Destiny has a mantle. You can only use one at a time, but you get access to several of them, and you can swap between them depending on the situation. Kind of cool, kind of awesome. I like it. I'm going to see how it works, but it seems pretty awesome on the face of it. Builders and spenders. So basically what you've got now, you have a series of charges and you stack them up. They have a baseline cap of 3 stacks, but you can modify those stack numbers. You can increase the cap. And basically what's happening here is you're going to build those charges, which are then spent on abilities. And the more charges you spend, the better the ability becomes, the more powerful it becomes. Which is really cool, honestly, because anybody can use these charges. Like, you can be a standard rogue, for example, and drop into primal and steal some of those charges and make abilities work with those charges. That's cool. It means that you're not gated with the class that you chose, but the class that you chose helps to define you, which is how it should be. And the charges will build up, to be used for some spending abilities. There's spenders and there's builders. You build things, you gain the charges, and you spend them. It's basically using one ability to amplify the power of another ability later. It's creating a rotation, which is really cool. And the enhancers, they're a specific one where if you have charges of something, you gain additional bonuses. Like an enhancer might be plus 15 HP, and then you gain 5 universal spell power per divine charge stack, or something like that. It's just, if you have those charges available, you're gaining a benefit. If you spend them, you lose that benefit, but you get a powerful, hit or a powerful effect that works for a certain amount of time. It's basically a trade-off, but it gives you choices, and that's important. That's actually really good. That's pretty much that system right there of the builders, spenders, and enhancers. But the idea of giving choice is a big deal. Like, before, there was no choice with something like Meldon's Darkness. You took it, or you died instantly to a boss. Nowadays, it's like, you can choose to keep your buff to, eke off some damage from a cleave that you might be expecting, and then smash him with a nice spender ability. That's something that can be done, and it's really, really good. I like how they go with that. And I think this is the final one, which is the Epic Feats, Destiny Feats, Legendary Feats changes. Now, there's a few things here. We'll go over them very quickly. But there's a few things here that they've just added, and the changes are in the teal color. So you get Epic Power still. It still gives melee ranged and universal spell power and reduction to the spell point cost, but also provides a spellcasting level for every 2 times the feat is taken. So that's where they added in that DC increase to everything, or the caster level increase to everything. Which is, it's good. Keep it added on there, it's nice. All Destiny feats no longer contain sphere requirements. That we already discussed, but that was a big component of Destiny feats, was sometimes you needed to fill out a martial sphere and a divine sphere, or something like that, or have 3 different spheres open and filled out. And for a new player, it was impossible. It was impossible to meet the requisites for those feats, so they would have to spend real money, or just be frustrated until they relifed, in order to rework those feats, because the Destiny feats weren't accessible to them when they were first lifing it. It's not a good mechanic when your first experience with a system is that system is punishing you. It's not a good mechanic. This way, it's a lot more fluid, and I like it a lot better, and I think new players would like it a lot more, and we want new players. We definitely want new players in this game. Epic Spell Power now also provides 10% spell critical damage with the appropriate element type. So you used to be able to just get plus 20 spell power with a certain type, but now it provides it 10% more damage, which is kind of cool. They're adding in that crit damage again. They've removed Epic Skill Focus because Epic Skill Focus was admittedly not that good, and I'm glad. They've also removed Dire Charge and Mass Frog. Dire Charge and Mass Frog are no longer epic feats, but they are still in the game. and we'll go into that in some time. They're actually in the Destinies themselves, but we'll go into that in part 2. Destiny feats with no minimum level are now min level 22. Used to be min level 28, they're now 25. Used to be min level 29, they're now 28. Now, I think that the 26s are probably also going to be pushed into the 25 range. I think that feels about right, but I'm not entirely sure on that one. It doesn't seem to be in the notes here. And then they've changed up all the legendary feats, so now they've increased, Scion of Earth adds to transmutation and conjuration, gives acid and poison. There's a bunch of different notes here about the Scion feats. Most of them are just changing up the spell critical damage and giving some spell crit in these. Every once in a while, like Scion of Fire gets an outright nerf, because it used to give spell critical damage, and now it just gives fire spell crit damage, and keeps all the rest that it used to have. It was actually probably the best Scion feat that I remember. Maybe Scion of Air was better for dodge cap, but honestly, I'd never really choose any of these Scion feats except the one that was relevant to my spell type anyway. So it's not like the spell critical damage lost from Scion of Fire is a big deal. It's a 5% nerf, really. Because you're not going to use... And how many other spells are you going to use than the element you chose to go into? Let's be honest, it's not a huge nerf. That being said, it is a nerf, so that is a thing. Scion of Water doesn't grant the maximum spell points. DCs of evocation spells and 2 to the DCs of other spells was added in. So there were a couple of other things. Everything else was just changes to that, the spell critical damage and stuff. But honestly, yeah, those are the real changes that we've dealt with here for part 1. Part 2 will actually go into Lamania and sort of explore what has actually happened to the Destinies. And really, we're going to explore more the theme and the power of things. I think we'll go more into the theme. We'll go more into the theme of what's actually happening with these trees and whether or not they feel like they fit. But for part 1, I think that's all that we're going to do here. And I might throw part 2 right on as an addendum here and just make this one giant video, but I think I'll call it here, actually. Yeah, I'm probably going to call it here. I'm going to put this as part 1 and just post these both probably after Lamania closes here. I think that it's going to be just a good retrospective of what I've learned in Lamania, more than anything else. So I think that I'm going to call this video a close here. I'm really excited for the changes. I'm really excited to check out what they actually amount to, what they look like in the game. But for now, I'm gonna let you guys go. For now, I'm gonna let you guys go and just let you digest what I've said here, if it wasn't way too much and just took way too long. But I think that's all for today, and I am glad that you guys stuck around for this long. If you have any comments, throw them in the comment section. It would always be nice to hear what you guys think about these kind of things. And I'm gonna get up out of here. So I will see you later. You take care, and bye-bye for now.